gentlemen, we are back for Dreams Money Can Buy, and we have in the building, look at me knocking the mic, we have in the building really, I think he's like a diamond in the rough. People don't really pay attention to his work as they should. Like, I feel like we make fun of him like he's wealthy when he's just really creative. He is such a pleasant personality to see how he not only advocates for Black women, but just Black people in general. But he just comes with very genuine energy with everything he does when it's on wax, when it comes to those audio interviews, when he writes up some things, it comes from like the heart. So it's just like an honor and a privilege to have Deascent in the building. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Deascent in the building. Clap it up. We're going to have like the clapping emoji and all that stuff in the background. So how you doing, bro?
Damn, you ain't lie. You did make me feel good. I feel better about myself now.
You should, man. You should. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
We're doing great. So I did say I wasn't going to surprise you, but I was going to surprise you with a quote, because I like finding when people write quotes, and you had a quote that you wrote from Robert Greene. Reputation is a cornerstone of power.
Ooh, you did.
Yeah.
You did some digging.
I know. So I kind of lied. I feel like when people have quotes, because everyone has a quote that they love, or like somewhere on the internet, I'll find it. But for that one, I feel like that really encompasses you, period. So how did you connect to that quote?
So, of course, like most people from the hood, I read the 48 Laws of Power. And that was one of the laws. And it stood out to me originally because it was a tattoo that I saw DJ Premier get. And DJ Premier is one of my favorite producers. So I just happened to find the book around the time that, he got the tattoo. So, of course, back then, with social media, having quotes was the thing. And it just seemed like something really, really cool to post. But when I got older, it really resonated with me because your reputation is definitely something that you have to guard and make sure that it's pristine in this business. So when I think about everything that I do, be it, in business or even just as a person, I want to make sure that my name and my reputation is solid. So that way, when it comes up in rooms, people won't have this look on their face of displeasure or distaste. Like, it's like, oh, definitely that guy. Absolutely.
So when I was looking through like my research for you, right? And just like, I think because you're one of those people that you've been at like an organization for quite some time. And it's kind of like you've gone up the ranks, but like you're a staff writer and you're like a content creator, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to writers, because I'm not as well versed with because we're all writers in a sense, but like I write in bullet points for comedy. But for you, have you been like a writer like your whole life type of thing? Like when you were growing up, were you just kind of like scribbling like thoughts out? Yeah,
actually. So I was never really good at talking when I was younger. I was the oldest, I didn't necessarily socialize with a lot of people around my age, and I resonated more with, adults, than kids. So I kind of stayed in my own head a lot. So I would just write all the time, and through there, I just like found ways to be able to communicate, whether it was actually writing as far as like, an essay or, even poetry to, music eventually. I was just always able to write. Like I was the type of person who in high school, if I didn't read the book, I would absorb information from the class discussion, be able to bust out a paper and get like a B- on it. Just because.
And that's not even you really trying. That's just you like bare minimum. Like you can just crush that out easy.
Yeah, I just have an affinity for words. Like I'm a very, very big advocate of words mean things, like down to the literal sense. Like a lot of people call me, Mr. Literal in a lot of ways, because when we talk, it's always based in semantics, because I feel like it alludes to a bigger argument, a bigger point when you use words the right way. But as far as writing, it was just something that came naturally to me. Even now as, a staff writer, I never went to school professionally for writing. I didn't even go to college. So writing just kind of always stuck with me because I always made music. But then once I started my job and people kind of had a sense that I knew how to write, it just kind of took off from there. I just did it more and more and more. And it was other people giving me feedback on my writing. I wasn't trying to even put myself out there as a writer because I felt like because I didn't go to college, I didn't have, the adequate skills, or I wasn't as polished as somebody who went to school for journalism or somebody who majored in English. But people felt like I had something to offer when I did write. So I just kept doing it. And eventually it helped me become a staff writer now.
So what I think is kind of like amazing when it comes to your journey? Because I knew you didn't go to college, and I do want to touch on when you went to the Institute of Audio Research, because I feel like even though you didn't go to college, you acquired some skills from this place that really helps you like continue like your evolution as a creator. Like, so we talked about how bare minimum you can get like a B- from just soaking in information. And I think you touched on music. So you did writing. Were you like, you did writing, poetry? Did you make music? Or were you just kind of like a person that just loved to use like that pen to create type of pieces to the world?
So it started out just me writing. Like we would have, essays in school and things like that. We would have to write like when you're a kid and, they give you an assignment, like maybe it's like Thanksgiving or something, or you have to write what you're thankful for, what you want for Christmas and things like that. And they put it on like a turkey or like a Santa hat or something like that.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, my teachers sensed that I was writing at a level that wasn't of somebody of that grade level. So I was in first grade, but like my teachers would say like Dwayne's writing at a third, fourth grade level.
Wow.
So it would be instances like that. And then, once again, an affinity for words just like came out of nowhere. So I would write poems and stuff like that. But in the third grade, I met some of my friends and they were rapping. And at the time, I didn't know how to rap, but, I wanted to fit in. So I beatboxed. So they would like rap at lunchtime and stuff like that. And I would do like, my little Fat Boys routine and all that. So eventually I did start to write my own rhymes. And then I just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And the thing that inspired me to want to pursue music was Fat Joe came to Career Day.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this was, what grade was this? Because I know
was
you were
third
saying,
grade.
Okay, so everything was like from third grade. Because first grade they were saying you're writing at a third, fourth grade level.
Yeah.
Fast forward to third grade, now you have like career fair, and a really good like rapper is coming to your career fair. That's amazing.
Yeah. So one of the teachers, this is around the time that Terror Squad was making their ascension here, and Fat Joe was still local, and I mean in a sense that you could just see Joe around the hood all the time. So Joe came in, and the way that everybody looked at Joe was something that always stuck in my mind, because I was like, I want people to look at me like that when I enter a room. So that set it up like, what, I'm pursuing music. So through the rest of elementary school, I was rapping. And then, of course, I got older, continued to do so. And then eventually in high school, I actually started to make music, going to the studio, recording, putting together songs, because I used to be, quote unquote, a battle rapper. Like I would do ciphers, after school. Being a kid, he feels he's better than me. After school, we set it up, go back and forth with our best rhymes, let the crowd decide. So I was cut from that DNA from a really young age of like rapping before it became, what it is today, where anybody with a laptop and a microphone and some sort of concept of rhythm can, be a rapper. Back then it was about your words. Even if you didn't have a beat, you had to make sure that your words, meant something. And once again, that ties into my affinity for words and making sure that, they mean something and they're impactful. So eventually I started making music. And then in high school, I had it made up in my mind that I was going to pursue music. And me being there was honestly a formality. And I'm the type of person when it comes to learning things, I'm not going to say that I'm lazy, but if it doesn't pique my interest, I'm not going to find a need to want to retain it. Or if it's not something I can apply to everyday life, I'm not going to want to use it.
Yeah, you didn't care about math. I know it. Like that was like code word for basically as someone that has that same feeling. Like it'd be like people try to say, yo, you need this. Like I'm not calculating any of this with these discounts and stuff like that. Maybe like a sale or something like that. But that's like rudimentary, like arithmetic.
Exactly.
So like after a while, you're probably like, I'm going to use these skills. The rest of it is like, and I'm just going to keep it going.
And once again, I excelled in, certain courses like, English and, history. And my senior year, we got to take media. And that's when I started to like be able to show my range as far as like knowing things within media, like, pop culture references. And, at the time, I just thought, it was because I watched a lot of TV and not, being able to peek into the future and seeing how it helps with my career now currently. But it was just something I was completely interested in. Me, I like to operate in some degree in a gray area. So subjects like science and math, where it's either a yes or a no, when there's definites and no room to kind of maneuver and, bend the laws a little bit, those things kind of lose me. But with history, you can have a debate about something because everything wasn't encapsulated in history. Certain elements are being left out. Same thing with language. And I went to a Catholic school. So even with religion, you can also have some sort of discourse and some sort of, dialogue about certain things that you disagree with, when it comes to the Bible or anything that they try to teach you.
Okay. So questions, right? So as you're kind of like using your profound kind of like use of words, getting through the battle raps sequence, when does your moniker Deascent come into like play? Is it like, because I feel like as someone that also has like, a moniker, like it comes at a young age and it kind of sticks. Is this something that because of your writing, was it like the battle rap, like someone gave you like that, like, or something? Like when did this like manifest to be like your kind of like your brand and identity?
So I got the name Deascent. Well, I gave myself the name Deascent around maybe my junior year of high school.
Okay.
Because at the time I didn't have a rap name. I was just, known as Dwayne who rapped when I was in school. And like knowing how everything is now in hip hop, that probably would have been a cool rap name to have. But I found that, if the name was going to fit me, it had to come organically, because I was like looking at different things and it just didn't fit my personality. Then I was online one day and I saw the word indecent, but somebody spelled it wrong. They spelled the decent portion Diescent. Mm-hmm. And I was like, if you're going to spell decent wrong, at least spell it Deascent.
Wow.
And then I was like, wait. And so I kind of just like wrote it down in like different fonts or whatever. And I just kept saying it and saying it. And I was like, yo, it sounds kind of cool, but like decent, like nobody wants to be decent. Everybody wants to be, excellent at something. Everybody wants to be great. Everybody wants to be the best, and decent doesn't necessarily allude to greatness. So I kind of looked at how I was always underestimated, in a lot of aspects of my life when I was younger. I was, skinny. I was, short. I was a little bit like mousy. Some would probably say I was timid. I was quiet. So people really didn't expect that much out of me in certain capacities. But when I rapped, that all changed. It was like almost they didn't expect that from me. Like, nah, you can't look like this, carry yourself like this, act like this, but sound like this when you rap. So I kind of used that, deceptive nature in a sense to kind of drive home the point of somebody being decent. So when people would ask me like, oh, you rap? I was like, yeah, I'm decent. And then, kind of underselling myself because, of course, they're underselling me as well. But then once I started to open my mouth and once I started to rap, it's like, yo, like, yeah, you're better than decent. So in a sense, I'm kind of like giving you this idea of like, yeah, underestimate me, so that way when I do surprise you, you're going to be like, whoa.
That's wild. Cause I feel like because of the play on the name of Deascent, cause it's like a misdirection, like in the name, right? Cause when people kind of like listen to your interviews or listen to your energy when it comes to your music, and then they look at your name and it's like, yo, this doesn't make any sense, right? Because it's like, I don't really want to call you Deascent, but even with the name, like how it's spelled, right? It's still like niche. It's still unique in its own sense where it's like, it stands out. Yeah. It fits in, but it stands out in a way. So it's kind of like you're there, but we see you, right? Yeah. And I think that's something that's pretty cool with how you made that.
And it definitely like is akin to my personality as well, because I'm definitely a person who takes pride in being able to kind of, I don't want to say play the background, because everybody likes to position themselves as somebody who's low key and kind of just scoping the scene when really they're not like that at all. But I do have like a reserved nature about myself where I don't have the need to be the center of attention, but I could still be in a situation where I could be very, very social. I don't need to, be somebody that just steps in and just takes over. I'm well within my realm of being able to work with people, but also if I feel like there's something that I need to take charge of, I will. So it's all about me being able to complement the energy around me. So I feel like Deascent, as far as a name, does that as well. And it is just that, it is a name, because at a certain point in my life, I felt like I kind of had to differentiate between the two. Like Dwayne is this person and Deascent is this person. The standard, verbiage that they give you when you're a rapper, like you got to have two different personalities. This is who you are to everyone else, and this is who you are, when you're on, quote unquote. And I just had to stop looking at it that way. Like it was literally just a name. Anybody who's close to me, they call me D anyway. So it doesn't matter if it's Deascent or Dwayne. Realistically, it's whatever people feel comfortable calling me by. I'm going to answer to that. But there's not like a split personality between the two. It's literally just a name.
Yeah, it's kind of like I don't want to say a job because it's like a brand for you, because we're gonna touch into like your podcast and other things, but it's just like I feel like you don't have the complex that a lot of other people have, where it's like their real name and then it's like their performative persona, whereas like they have to be someone else, where you're literally just yourself, but how that manifests is in those two different ways where you're still the same person, but like the skill sets you're using for Dwayne and Deascent are different.
Yeah.
So I do want to touch on like the Institute of Audio Research, because never knew existed until I saw it on your thing. Like what made you decide to go to that? Because I feel like that place really helped, because you in senior year you had the media, so that helps you with what you do now. But how does that place, Institute of Audio Research, even help you more with more skill set that you need?
So once again, I knew in my mind that college was going to be a waste of time, and not from an educational perspective, but once again, I was somebody who barely made it out of high school, because of the lack of interest that I had in certain subjects. So I knew for a fact that with college, it was going to be me wasting my time with something that I knew I wasn't passionate about. And rather than waste time and money, I just forewent all of that. And so back in the day, the double XL, in the very, very back, they used to have, where you could get your fake jewelry, your grills and all that other stuff. And they used to always have ads for the Institute of Audio Research.
Right. Oh, snap.
So I would, I just kept seeing it. And then I saw it was in New York. So I was like, you know what? Maybe this is the route that I need to go. I say that I'm in music, and it wasn't necessarily a music school, but it was more about the teachings behind the scenes when it came to, music. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this, because they offered an internship at the end. And I felt like that was going to be my entrance into the music industry, and also getting an education about everything that went on behind the scenes. So I signed up. It was a 9-month program, and I wound up finishing with like a 3.9 GPA or something like that, because I was just really, really invested. It touched on different aspects of music, like, sound. And, I literally learned how to make microphone cables. I know.
So you did not have a class or anything that you didn't care for, because it basically was stimulating all parts. Hence why you got the 3.9. Like, what happens when you're stimulated correctly in a proper environment? You were crushing it.
Exactly. We had lecture classes, and we also had labs as well. And it was cool because one of my teachers in a lecture class, he was actually the mixing engineer for Ether. Yeah, so he mixed Ether. So
that's crazy.
Like, my teachers were people who like worked on, records from like, everyone to, Kool and the Gang to Wyclef, and you will walk the halls and see their platinum plaques and stuff like that. So I was really in the headspace of like, this is my element. This is where I needed to be. But we finished, and then they're setting us up for internships. And at the time, an internship at a studio just pretty much meant for a good duration. You were just shadowing an engineer and probably wouldn't get to do anything until maybe 6 months to a year into being there. And at the time, I needed money. I'm fresh out of high school, not necessarily, in college, but like in school, Monday through Friday. And I wound up working at McDonald's, to kind of satiate my rap career as far as like paying for stuff, but, also keeping money in my pocket. But even through me working at McDonald's, there'll be instances like in between customers, I'm writing rhymes on the back of receipts and putting them in my pocket, and then going home and putting them in my book. So at that time, after high school, it was like, yeah, music is everything. It was two main objectives when it came to me around the time I was 17 to 18. It was to make sure that I had money in my pocket, and to make sure that I was pursuing my dream as a musician.
So here's my question, right? Because when I was looking at your profile on LinkedIn, so I'm looking at the Institute of Audio Research,
right? And
then I'm looking at the company that you work for right now. I would have never guessed you doing that, right? And of course, when it comes to this company, like, you've been there for about 4 years, but you've touched on so many different types of jobs that, because of that process, it's kind of like, I don't want to say it's kind of like a college for you, but it's like a cool space for you to like flex some even more things. Like, you're a content creator, you still are content creator and writer for like 4 years on there. Then you're social media manager and social content manager for like 2.5 years or more for the other ones. And then you're staff writer, right? So all of those things kind of intersect, but it also makes you understand like this new landscape of like, how do people push out content in like this social media environment. How did you get from like McDonald's and like making rhymes on the back of receipts and like you had this audio background to now you're like playing on that pop culture and all like the playing on the words that you're good at? How does that manifest? How does that come about?
Man, if I had to be completely honest with you, this wasn't a career that I sought out for myself. It kind of sought me out.
Wow.
So, you know, I work some really, really like, you know, I don't want to say menial in the sense that anybody who does it now, you know, isn't of substance and of worth. When I say menial, it was like literally me just like doing them so I could get from point A to point B. So after McDonald's, I worked at Dwayne Reed, and then from Dwayne Reed, and I actually got fired from Dwayne Reed.
Wow, what happened?
So I had a manager that, you know, just didn't like me. And one day he just really like got me on the wrong day. So we had a back and forth. He sent me home, and then on my way out, I knocked over a Clarendon display in the store. So I wound up, you know, not having a job after that, and it continued for like maybe 2 years that I was unemployed. And also that was just like a string of bad luck after that. So I'm fired. The woman that I'm dating at the time, she breaks up with me, and one of my homies who I was making music with, he moved like to Poughkeepsie. So I can't even go to the studio now because it's out of my depth because I'm not working right now. So I was just in like a real bad space for like maybe like 2.5 years. But then slowly but surely I started to pull myself out of it. I wound up, you know, working a job as, you know, a home health aide. But a little before that, I was still doing shows, you know, wherever there was a show, I would go and just like do it, you know, at that time. Like I didn't care. I just wanted to be seen. Like I was doing shows in Connecticut. I was doing shows in Long Island. I would go out to Ohio to do shows. Like I was just doing them. Some were paid, some weren't. You know, it was just about the opportunity, sleeping on my friend's couch, you know, when I'm in town and things like that, just so I could just get a little bit closer to my dream. So I wound up doing a show with my friend Brent, you know, and me and Brent, we managed to like click instantly when we met. We never knew each other. The person who organized the show was a mutual friend, and we just like met and just hit it off right off the bat. So we did the show, and then Brent was like, yo, we should work together. And time went past, you know, and then eventually we both got in a space where we could work with each other, and we wound up doing a joint project together. And that joint project manifests itself into so many different opportunities for me, from, you know, doing shows. And I'm talking about like having residencies. So we had a residency at Pianos. We had 2 residencies where every Saturday night at 9:00 you could see us perform at Pianos. We did Drum. We did, you know, Webster Hall. We've done National Sawdust. The project that we did, the cold press.
Yeah, I was about to ask, is this before or after the State of the Art for you?
This was after State of the Art.
Okay.
So we did the cold press, and then the music from that actually wound up in an independent film called The Dunning Man, and it's actually won a few awards. Won an award out in France as well. So
definitely congrats. You went international.
Appreciate it, bro. So like we, you know, had a whole bunch of different opportunities at our feet that, you know, I probably would have never saw, you know, just like being a rapper, because we actually had a full band as well.
Wow. Okay. So you had like the full kind of like
it was kind of, if you had to compare it to something, it was kind of like Linkin Park a little bit.
Okay, because I was thinking either Linkin Park or like that sound experience, the SOX, Donnie Trumpet. I was thinking Donnie Trumpet, that social, that album that had was just like a movement of like not only just people that can do rap, but it's like that whole experience of having all those instruments in the background, and it kind of gives another voice in the background, like the feeling.
It was more so like a Linkin Park kind of thing where we just like took like our songs and like had a live band play it, and then you know we were playing with the band consistently, that we just decided to like make the band a thing itself. Okay. So Brent, you know, at the time, you know, my day job, I was a home health aide.
Yeah, because you're basically taking care of other people and making sure they're good. And all
Yeah. And being a home health aide, you know, I had a pretty easy case. So I would just like come take care of my client, you know, and then in the meantime, my client was so nice and gracious. Like he would let me, you know, just be able to sit there and just like work on music or like come up with ideas while I'm at work for like merchandise or like all these different things as far as like logos and, you know, all that. So I'm brainstorming while I'm at work. And eventually Brent was like, yo, why don't you come and work with me? And at the time, Brent was working at a wine company that was under the same umbrella as Pop Dust. So
wow. Okay, so this is where Pop Dust is starting to get introduced to you.
Yeah. So, at the time, I was just like, yeah, I'll go and, just to see what the job was like, because it couldn't been any worse than what I was doing right now, because I was just doing a lot of work and not necessarily getting paid what I felt like I should have been. So I went, interviewed for the job, wound up getting the job. They had me on a probationary period for like maybe 3 months as like a contractor, and then 2.5 months they hired me full time. So I'm only thinking about my job as a logistics operator when it comes to the wine company that I work for. And the woman I was dating at the time, she was aware of Pop Dust. And she was like, "You work for Pop Dust, or you work in the same place as Pop Dust?" I was like, "Yeah, I guess." I didn't know what Pop Dust was. I wasn't familiar with it all too much. So she wanted to write originally for it. So I put in a word to my boss, and she wound up writing, and she wanted me to help her with one of her interviews. And this interview was supposed to be King Crooked, Sway, and the winner from this show that was on BET at the time called One Shot.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah. So I was supposed to interview King Crooked, Sway, the winner, and one of the producers.
Wow.
What wound up happening was King Crooked and Sway couldn't make it because of plane issues or, travel issues. So I wound up interviewing the winner and one of the producers. The interview never got put out, but that was like my first real introduction to Pop Dust through her. And then afterwards, I kind of like gained an interest in it because I would tell my friends who also make music, like, "Hey, I got access to this pop culture website. So if you're looking for write-ups on your projects, just reach out to me. And then I could potentially, have one of the interns do it or pass it along to one of the writers." So one of my homies reached out to me, and I was going to ask one of the interns to do it. But then for some reason, I just decided to do it myself. And I did it, and his label wound up loving it and said that it was one of the best write-ups they've ever gotten. So more of my friends started to reach out to me, and then I would do pieces for them, and then also like cover like news and stuff like that happened in pop culture. And I'm just writing at this point, just writing just to write. And it was going up on the site, but I'm still not thinking anything of it because to me at this point, it's a hobby. So
that you just happen to get paid for.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't getting paid for it. I was just doing it just for the sake of doing it because I wanted to write.
So wait, I just want to understand. So you said you were working for the wine company that's connected to Pop Dust, right?
Yeah.
And so that has nothing to do with your current position. You just have like that in where you can just talk to people, but you were allowed to write for it.
Yeah, I was just allowed to write for it because they knew
crazy.
I was good. They knew I made music, of course, and they knew that I knew a lot about, pop culture and stuff like that. So they just like, I'm just writing just to write and like just thinking this is cool because it was like a hobby and it just so happened to be under the same umbrella of the company I'm already working for. So I got the bug to want to start interviewing again. And one of my favorite, well, at the time, independent artists was in town. And his name is Derek Milano. And funny enough about Derek Milano is that he was my first interview. And now he's probably one of the most sought after songwriters right now in the business. He's responsible for Hot Girl Summer. He's responsible for Savage. He's worked with Nicki. He's worked with Wiz. He's worked with Bieber. And at the time, he was an artist himself. And I was just a fan of his. And I was just like, "Hey, bro, I see you're in town. I'm a big fan of yours." Because we were following each other on social media for a while. And I was like, "Yo, if you want to stop by and do an interview, let's do it." And he did reach out to me. He was like, "Yeah, let's do it." So the next day, he came through. We did an interview. And that was my first on-camera interview.
And that was up and stuff like that.
Yeah, and went up and on YouTube and stuff like that. And still, I'm just like, you know what? This is fun to me. Like, I'm not thinking of this as a career. This is something that, I can do because I have the resources at my disposal to do so.
So people are watching you, right? And when I mean, obviously, you have views and stuff, but that's why I was kind of like befuddled. That's one of my favorite
but
words.
this was at the time where like Pop Dust was going through like a revamp of itself because we started out like the original DNA of Pop Dust was a place where a lot of upcoming artists and a lot of established artists were able to kind of set their foot. So in the beginning we had Miguel, we had Big Sean, we had Fifth Harmony, we had One Direction, LMFAO, Currency. So we had big names at Pop Dust.
You had a palette.
At Pop Dust. And the guy behind it, he was one of the people responsible for discovering Nirvana.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. So he had a lot of connections in the industry, obviously, but eventually he wound up walking away and the site kind of just like fell and it became like very like National Enquirer, Star, like supermarket, tabloid kind of news where like it was like stuff that kind of bordered on softcore porn as well.
Wow.
Like it would be like, the 10 best nipple slips or something like that from a movie. So around the time that I got introduced to it, we were in this transitional phase of like bringing it back to,
its roots.
Yeah, with, integrity. Obviously, we don't have the same access that we did before with those big names, but we still had enough credibility where we could get, stars that are fairly known and some upcoming independent talent that's on the radar themselves. So I'm doing more interviews and more interviews and more interviews. And then I just started to like do things because I had the opportunity to do them. So people would come to me at one point because we started booking so much talent that they didn't have anybody to interview them. So they just came to me like, hey, we got this guest coming in today. Can you interview them? Yeah, sure. Cool. Here's a press release. And I would go above and beyond. I wasn't just sticking to the press release when they would, give it to me. I'm looking for old interviews. I'm looking for, everything possible because that's just me as a music fan, not even just as a journalist, somebody who grew up in music, obviously, who studied it, who like made it his passion. He was just obsessed with it. So to me, it was just, par for the course, me just like doing extra work outside of what's given to me on this press release. And so when I would do my interviews, the guests would be like, oh, you really know your stuff. Like it was down to a point where like simple things matter. Like when I'm interviewing a band, with multiple members and they would come in and I would be able to name each one of the band members before they even introduced themselves. And it was like, yeah, this is going to be a good interview because, you can tell he knows some stuff.
It changes the vibe too, just because they have to do so many interviews that it shows that because you did your homework, it's going to be a more engaged interview instead of like the traditional, I'm just going to talk about like the same 3 to 5 questions that everyone's talking about, but we just have to have it on our website, our platform, because we need it for our content. But for you, you were like, all right, this is the guideline. I'm gonna dig deeper. And I think it shows in the work where we eventually, I'm so curious at how you even like manifested that podcast. Yeah. Cause I think it's really great when you got to talk to like very on the rise talent and how you make them feel comfortable. You give your tips to someone that understands music. So you're doing all these things. When does it that you finally become like they slap them on like you are a writer and a content creator? You start getting paid for it. 'Cause that's what I'm curious about. Like when does that become official?
So once again, I'm still doing all of these different things, like these interviews, they're coming in slowly but surely. And these are interviews that are getting thrown to me. Like at this point, I don't even have a Pop Dust email. Like I'm emailing them from like, my artist email that I have when people would want to come and do interviews. So I just literally kept doing it. And then the social media kind of just like fell by the wayside. And I just started like posting to the social media. I'm like, yeah, if we're doing an interview, we should probably post that we're doing an interview. No. So it was just something as simple as that went overlooked. But to me, it's just the obvious. So I started doing that and they started to notice like, the social media engagement kind of started to go up. Like there was like a consistent flow of content going up on our social media. So eventually they approached me and they were like, hey, so do you want to run our social media? I'm like, I mean, I could, but like all I'm really doing is posting. They were like, yeah, that's fine. Like we don't have anybody posting. Like I know you're already making salary with, Lot 18. That was the name of the wine company. You're already making a salary with Lot 18, but how about we pay you, let's say a stipend of $100 a week, to run the social media. And I was like, okay, cool. And that's how it started with me, going from doing it just for the sake of doing it to all of a sudden now I'm kind of like a freelancer. And from there, once again, we moved into another office. And so our clientele kind of like expanded a little bit more. So let me back up a little bit. So the interview that kind of like, set everything on pace for me was when I interviewed Big Boy from Outkast. So that was at the time when like my friend Brent, he was more so deep into like the Pop Dust stuff. Yeah. Because he was like kind of doing both things because, he made music as well. And they kind of sought him out to be like the guy. And then once I started working there, they were like, oh, both of you guys could kind of like co-manage this together in a way. So him and I, we both did a phone interview with Big Boy. And that was like my first really big artist that I interviewed. And then we had a relationship with the tech show Cheddar.
Wow. Okay.
So one day they had a segment and they needed, somebody to go and do it. So they asked me to go and do it. So I'm on Cheddar now. And then they wanted me back. So I'm doing Cheddar again. And this is all like in the same year that I'm really like starting to like make sort of like headway into like,
so things are just happening.
Yeah,
like it's just happening in all these different areas, and you just
and I'm just going and I'm just able to keep up, and I'm just there, every step of the way, when things are manifesting themselves. So I get the content, social media manager job. So I'm doing that, and then every so often I write an article as well. But then we started to get like a whole bunch of interviews at the time, so much to the point that we had to develop a schedule for it.
Wow. Okay.
So we're starting to get like, literally like Wednesdays, like was the day, because we were doing like a Facebook live stream, and we would like make it like a really huge thing where it was kind of like NPR Tiny Desk, where people actually would come to the office and perform, because at the Pop Dust office, we have a piano, we have mics, we have guitars. So like people would come and just like set up in the office and do like
just kind of like that live performance, and you have a conversation.
Yeah.
Within that. Wow. It's crazy.
Exactly. So, and once again, these are the artists that I'm not, picking. These are artists that are being given to me, and I'm still giving great interviews. So it kind of helped me widen my base of being able to interview anybody from any genre of music. And you can always tell when somebody's engaged in the interview. You can always tell when it's kind of like a paint by numbers, where like they're reading off the press release and they're just trying to get through it. You can tell who pays attention to certain details. And I didn't want to be one of those hosts. I wanted every interview to feel like I cared, even if it wasn't necessarily an interview that I cared about. I still did my research the same way. I didn't slack or anything like that. Then it started to, out of nowhere, I started to get bigger artists. And like, I tell people this all the time, and like they have a hard time believing this. Like, it literally just started off with like one big artist, and then like from there it was just like a domino effect.
So like the dam broke, and it's like all the waters, like all the challenges coming your way.
So like my first like really big, quote unquote interview was Algie Smith.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is this after the new edition?
After the new edition, and this was actually the day after he appeared at the MTV VMAs, because The Hate You Give was about to come out.
Wow. Okay, that's great timing.
Yeah, so I interviewed him the day after the VMAs, and that was like my first like really big interview. And from there, it just started to like grow and grow. So then, from there it's Mario, then it's, Elvonner, and then it's just like, Macy Gray, and then it's Marsha Ambrosius, and then, Little Brother, and all these like I'm actually forgetting people. Like that's how many like
you've interviewed a lot of people.
I've interviewed a lot of people. There was a point where like I was doing roughly anywhere to 2 to 3 interviews in a day.
Well, I thought you were about to say in a week. So you're basically crushing like a minimum of maybe 15? Am I doing my right? 3 times 5 is 15.
Yeah, I was doing a lot.
Probably like 12 to 15 interviews a week.
I was doing a lot.
So you're really getting the experience points. You're getting the reps up. And the funny thing is, even though it kind of seems like out of nowhere, I think it's because of how you did like those earlier interviews. And you know it too, because it's like you went above and beyond.
Yeah.
And the one thing it is, and it's funny because I started off the interview with the whole quote of reputation, the cornerstone of power, right?
Yeah.
I think when people like hear how you carry an interview, people are going to tell their friends, and it's going to like probably tell their peers, and it like makes people go, I really want to have a conversation with this person. And I think that's the most important thing, where it's just like, it's so much respect that you're giving the other person, like doing the homework. Mm-hmm. And now just like, I'm excited for the next time you talk to someone else.
Yeah,
absolutely. You earned that.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, man. So like, it was that, and just when the publicists would come, they saw how the artist would respond to me. And me being professional, me being on point, me, being able to give a great interview and have the artist happy made the publicist take notice. So like the publicist started to like frequent me a lot, where it's like, hey, got this person coming up. Would you like to interview him? I got this person. Would you like to interview them? And that's them coming to me constantly and consistently. So it's like you said, I'm building up my reputation, but even still with my reputation, I'm making sure that I'm doing good work nonetheless, like with everything that's coming my way, because there were instances where I felt like, I pretty much just topped out. Like, that's it. That's the last big artist that I'm going to get. And then I get an email like, hey, do you want to interview such and such? And it's like, okay, we're back, So it just really, really proved to me that I'm on the right path to doing something. But once again, this is all happening and I'm just like in it. Like, I'm just in the middle and everything is just like whirling around me as like I'm just standing in the middle, but I'm handling everything, and it really, really conditioned me to be able to sit down with anybody and have a conversation. And that's what I prided my interviews on being. It was a conversation, like I'm a big fan of making people feel comfortable, because that was something that I wish I had in a lot of instances in my life, where people make me feel okay to, be myself. So I try, even outside of interviews and life, when I encounter people, to make them feel okay about being themselves. So with artists, I know they're very, very vulnerable. They're very, very guarded. And some of them, depending on the level of stardom that they have people who go out of their way to try to humiliate them and embarrass them and try to, get a viral moment out of them or ask the salacious question to kind of throw them off guard. But I'm like, as somebody who at one point wanted to be in that position, of stardom, and as somebody who makes music and somebody who's a fan of a lot of these people, I wouldn't want to do that in the least bit, because that messes up my reputation too. Because what happens is people are going to say, yeah, don't go to Pop Dust to be interviewed by Deascent because he gives a terrible interview for the sake of making himself laugh and entertaining himself. So I just really wanted to make sure that the artists were comfortable. And in the midst of them being comfortable, I get the best out of them in an interview, because if they're standoffish and, they're kind of disconnected and on guard, like that shows.
Yeah. You know what? And I didn't want to interrupt you. I want to listen. Because it's funny, because I think a lot of people know that I love binging a lot of podcasts, right? And I don't know if I ever told you, but I feel like your podcast, when I listened to it, I don't know if it came around before I started Minds. I don't remember. And I don't have the time to actually check. But I do use yours as inspiration. I know I always say online, I always say it's Nardvark, Hot Ones, and it's the real, right? But when it comes to like interviews and like how people make them feel comfortable, I do go to yours, as I enjoy yours, because I intentionally listen to a lot of podcasts. Yeah. Some is because I'm friends with y'all and others because I genuinely enjoy what they do. And for yours, your interviews make me want to tap into these artists because a lot of times I don't have the time to listen to new music, right? I'm pretty much a podcast curator at this point. People go to me as like, yo, what do you listen to? I'm listening to so many massive things. So for people like you or like the Armand Sadlers, the people that are really into the music, I trust you guys when it comes to what you guys like, because you make music. And I do want to touch into that too, because I listened to like one of your songs you posted and it's like, I didn't know you as a musician, like a rapper. I've known you as you do great interviews. I heard you on We Shall Overchug. I've seen some of the content you've done. I was like, yo, how comes he doesn't have more music out? Because that's when I start. I always go into like a whole waterfall effect of like, I'm going to digest this person depending on how they are. And you've just been such an amazing force. That's why I just want to, this is like also giving flowers. This is why I love these interviews.
I appreciate it, man. I really do.
And I think that's what you should know, because like, I'm way more junior when it comes to interviews, but like that's the set of tone of like, that's why I want to do my research. I want to make sure that, this is not something I'm just talking about research. Like, yo, there's so many questions that I have. Like, you're doing all these great things with interviews. What's happening with the music? Because I know when I'm looking on the SoundCloud, like you do have some songs, you have some freestyles. But like, are you still like passionate about the music, or is like this is like you have a dual kind of flame of like the passions where you still love music, but like that background is helping you do great with the writing and the interviews and the content creation?
I always say when it comes to like me and music, I became a victim of my own success because I was so focused on music. Like, once again, like my world consisted of music. It didn't matter where I was personally, I just always made sure that, the music came first. So, with music, I hit like, I don't want to say my apex, but like around 2011 going into 2012, that's when I really started to like hit a consistent stride with music. I put out my first real official project called State of the Art. And that project was my baby because I've been through numerous crews, numerous labels, like whatever you want to call it. at that point in my music career. But this was the first time that like I actually had like control of the music that I made. I picked the producers, I picked the features, I paid for studio time. Like I had the concept for the album cover. Like this was like my baby. And that kind of like set me on my way as far as being able to do so many different things, because I made sure that I invested in my career. So like I don't have rinky dink, videos. Like I'm coming out of pocket, and paying money for videos. Like my first really big video, Make It Anywhere, I actually had a producer from out of town come and shoot it. They came from Ohio and came to New York for that weekend to shoot the video. So I always made sure that my visuals was on point. And I didn't care if it got, 1 view, 100 views, 1,000 views. Like I just wanted to make sure it was good for my own personal brand and benefit. So that way I could say to people like, yo, I did my best, so when people actually do see it, it's like, wow, this is really, really good quality. So a whole bunch of videos, a whole bunch of shows, and like it wound up just being these situations where like I would do a show and people would come, hey, yo, I got a show here. You want to come do it? Yeah, sure, no problem. Hey, yo, I got a show here. You want to come do it? Yeah, sure, no problem. And then I just like kept hitting the ground running, like doing music. Like opportunities just kept opening up for me. Like I was like, I don't want to say I was there, but I was there. But then I found this and it was just like, yo, I really love this. Like maybe this is what I've been doing all along, because I started to reach a point like as a musician where I saw the landscape around me starting to change with music. And it was like the same feeling that I had, the same sort of energy that, I loved about music. It was a dramatic shift. And I'm not saying it was a bad shift, but it was just a shift that I was unfamiliar with. And I didn't have the same feeling about making music like I did before. So I always like said to myself, like, yo, I'm going to put out another project, and I'll be in the middle of putting out a project or like putting together, music, and then another opportunity will happen. So like one instance, after the follow up of After State Art, I planned on doing another album, and then I started working on it. And then me and Brent, we crossed paths again, and I wound up working on the cold press. And then the cold press turns into like a good, year to year and a half of my life where me and Brent are doing a whole bunch of shows and we're shooting videos and we're doing all these other different things. So, the cold press, I don't want to say it disbands, but, we take a break from the cold press. That was time for me to go back into solo mode, because we were a duo. We were essentially like Run the Jewels in a way.
Okay, because I was thinking of like either that or kind of like Jada or Styles P, like those really strong duos where it's not really a lead. It's more of like a tag team, like a very fluid tag team of like jump in and musically just work together.
That's how it was. And me and Brent, we came from two different worlds. Like Brent rapped, but he also like played guitar and like could produce and like played a whole bunch of instruments. And me just being, the straight up, Bronx bred rapper, like we managed to take those two and fuse it into something and create something really, really cool and dope. And once again, it gave us a whole bunch of different opportunities. But then it was like, yeah, this was cool, but I want to get back into my solo run, especially since now I'm at a point in my life where, this is at the time, like, I'm just like, growing, I'm learning more about myself. So of course that leads to better music when you find yourself. And I started working on that. And then, all of a sudden the pop dust thing kind of started to like seep in, and like, I'm focusing on that. Like I'm still writing, I'm still making music, I'm doing features for people, but like my primary goal started to become interviewing. And the more I just interviewed, the more I felt, a love for it and a passion for it. And honestly, it was the same rush that I got from making music, if not better.
Okay, so we can say that, because the interesting thing is, like, we've started this interview just looking at you're very developed as a young child when it comes to writing, and then how that transitions into expression when it comes into the music, when it comes into just the essays and just all that stuff. You're going into it. That love of music is really propelling you forward and forward and forward. But you're still in the music world, but it's just a different way of how you analyze it now. Like when you're even listening to other people's music, because you have made music. I mean, like how people make fun of people that are like basketball analysts, like, yo, you never really played, but it's like different because you really played, right? Exactly. So you understand it. So we can take you more seriously than people that haven't really done it.
And I'm a fan, and I'll also remove my bias from being a rapper in a lot of these instances, because I'm somebody that enjoys music, as a whole. And I don't have a big enough ego where, you know, I feel like if I'm criticizing something, it's me criticizing it from a point of, well, I don't make music, you know, to that extent anymore. So I'm just talking just to talk. You know, it's literally, if I give my critique on something, it's because I'm really, really passionate about it. And more often than not, I'm the type of person that vocalizes things that he loves more than things that he doesn't. You know, I'm not going to spend time highlighting, you know, negativity in a sense. And in essence, it might not be bad. It just might not be for me. So with me being able to have, you know, it's not even just so much writing, but having conversations about music in a very, very nuanced way that a lot of people don't have. Like my homies hate me because I'm the type of person that if we're debating music, like I bring statistics and facts into an argument. You know, I'm not going to say, you know, this thing isn't a classic if I don't have tangible proof to prove that it's a classic, you know, and things like that, because I was just so immersed in music and music knowledge, you know, because some people who make music, they don't have music knowledge. You know, they're just only invested in the things that they like to listen to or, you know, the type of music that they like to make. But they don't. It
makes it really narrow.
Yeah. So they don't have like, you know, a good grip and range on, you know, different things. And it's not just with hip hop. Like I love all types of genres of music, you know, like I love, like there was a point in time where like I was just like engrossed in rock music where like I wasn't listening to hip hop as much. I just loved, you know, rock music, you know, and me just having like a different love and like a different appreciation for different kinds of music didn't limit me to a lot of the opportunities that I got either. So yeah, I can interview, you know, this rap group that's like one of my favorite rap groups, but I can also interview this rock band as well, whose music I enjoy because I enjoy the music. And when you enjoy something, you're a lot more enthusiastic about it. And I want that enthusiasm to radiate when I do interviews and not just have it radiate when it comes to the people I'm interviewing, but with people who watch as well. And one of my friends, a really good friend of mine, they said that kind of something similar to what you said, that when I interview, they care about artists that they didn't think they would care about before when they sit down and talk to me. Like I have a really good way of making people care about the artist. And that's as profound as that may be to me, that's like, you know, the bare minimum of what you would want to do as an interviewer.
Which is crazy because that's not common. You know, there's a lot of times you go through like watching an interview where it's just like, I'm like paying attention to it, right? But it's like that's why that is a very good like credence or like credential I want to say. Like I really looked at your things of like when I look at people that are great interviewers, and when I'm finding out facts about this person, it's like I'm very intrigued by this person now. Because if it's just bare minimum, like again, this is just for responsibility. I'm not going to say certain like, you know, entities and stuff like that. Certain entities are not as good as they used to be when it comes to interview. Like right. Now I don't even care about their interviews. I really lean towards our Black creators when it comes to their podcasts, their visual platforms. And that's why when it comes to you, I feel like you transition so well that nobody can call you a hip hop interviewer. Like you are an interviewer. And I feel like that, to me, the sky's the limit for where you can go. Like I can see you on red carpet. I can see you for like the Grammys. I can see you for like the Oscars when it comes to like interviewing these people on the red carpet. It is interviewing anybody of anywhere when it comes to his music or any type of thing that is connected to that background that you have. And I think that's what made me excited to talk to you, just because it's just like, I'm just seeing you work. But also I'm just like, all right, so now the primary for you is like the conversation, the soft skills of like those interviews. Yeah. But you still love music, but it's just like a new love has manifested. You still love the old thing, but you know, when it's time for an album, and I think it'll be true for you, it'll come out. It's just right now, it's not the time yet.
Yeah, and I feel like, you know, with me being as active as I am, I've unearthed this concept of, you know, creative privilege, where it's like I do things creatively because I want to, not because I have to. So like when it comes to making music, I make music when I want to now because I have other outlets to satiate my creative being, you know, where, you know, I can write, you know, an article or anything for that matter, you know, just writing. Like writing is therapeutic for me. Like I still own notebooks. I know everybody's into their phone and they have their laptops, but it's just something about having a pen in your hand and connecting with the paper that just makes it feel more organic and more real. So I still keep notebooks and I still just write ideas. Like I'll write down ideas about ideas in my notebook just so I can just see it and just like have a clear view of where I want to take certain things. And it just makes me feel better. So that aspect of like being able to just like write, at free will about anything is something that I really, really don't take for granted, because a lot of people can't do that. But in the same vein, and this is something that I also discovered like during, quarantine, I wanted to start doing more video content, and I did. I started making, funny videos, and not so much to step in the realm of being a quote unquote comedian, but people tell me all the time that I have a great sense of humor, and I wanted to put that on display, but also show my intelligence as well. So I started making these little like videos and stuff like that people started to resonate. And I had a series that I used to do called "Is It Racist?" that a lot of people enjoyed.
Yeah,
so,
it was funny. Like when I was watching those things.
So I would do stuff like that, but it's like, even if I don't want to do that, I can always, do something else creatively. But that's because I want to, not necessarily because I have to, because I'm in a position now where like creating is my job. And yeah, there are things that I create exclusively for Pop Dust versus things that I may create exclusively for my own brand and for myself. But still, nonetheless, it's literally my job in some aspect to always think about doing something creative. So yeah, with music, like, once again, I love music. Like, I still think about it every single day. Like, I have songs that, I haven't released, but like, I'm not in the headspace of like releasing things for the sake of just releasing things, or just putting things out for the sake of just putting things out. There needs to be a right time and a right place. And plus, I'm also a big supply and demand type of person. I'm not saying, I need people beating down my door to say that they want music. But like, if I feel like people aren't checking for me, I'm not going to give them something they're not looking for, like, and I know a lot could be said about a lot of things that I'm doing now. Like well, let me not say that, because, I'm terrible at downplaying myself, a lot of ways. Like, a lot of people do look forward to, my interviews and things like that. So I can't even say that, people aren't waiting for interviews. But like, as far as music goes, people will bust my chops about it and say, yeah, when you put out music, like, oh, you don't rap anymore. But it's like, I don't feel like there's like some sort of like noise or like, anticipation for me to put out music. But when I feel like, I just want to put something out for the sake of just, expression, because that's what everything that I do is centered around. Because even with, COVID and everybody being at home, I took a break from doing, my show hosted by Deascent, because I just felt like, my platform was like different from a lot of other people's. Not better, but just like different, and just like so unique to like my own individual personality. And with that gone, the set, and like, I didn't have the ability to play games in person like I did before, and all these other different things. I feel like a lot of the energy surrounding it was just gone. So I'd rather just like not do it than create like, a sub-level version of it. I'm all about maintaining standards when it comes to, things that I do. So I love interviewing so much, and I have such a great appreciation for interviewing, that I was just like, you know what? If it's not going to be the way that I feel like it should be, then I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to push it to the side and, come back to it when the time is right.
Okay, I respect it, because that's like when you were interviewing like those artists, and that's why you had like the video and the audio components, right? Yeah. So, because I didn't get to see the video component, because again, I manifest with all the podcasts. Yeah. So that's the reason why it's kind of like on hold, right? Because like until you can it gets back to like a healthier space where you can create it to the high level that you're used to. There's no point of trying to continue it at this level that's not the same.
Exactly. Okay. And that's what it was. Like I did two. One interview was with the former star from The Chi.
That individual.
Yeah. So I was like, yeah, this was cool. This is a great interview, but like something was missing. It didn't feel the same. Like I'm in my living room, and like we're all in our living rooms at the time, but like it just didn't feel the same. The conversation was great, the interview was great, but like it just didn't have the same feeling as I do when like the guest is right next to me, and I have the big hosted by Deascent graphic behind me and all this other stuff. So it was like, yeah, let's put this on pause for right now. And then that's when I started doing the videos and all these other things. And then more recently, since I did make the transition into being a full-time creative at Pop Dust, I started this IGTV series called Topic of Discussion. And people tell me all the time that, I should do a podcast. And I'm like, I don't necessarily want to do one, because it's a space that a lot of people occupy. And once again, I'm all about being able to say something if it's worth saying something. But with Topic of Discussion, I felt like that's an outlet for me to talk about, pop culture from a standpoint that ties into society, because I don't think we realize how much of pop culture affects society and vice versa. So the idea behind topic of discussion was to kind of bridge the two.
It's like a seesaw effect. It's like how you affect one affects the other.
The ramifications of like one situation, and how it pertains to, things in society. So the first episode was centered around the Megan Thee Stallion, Tory Lanez situation. And it pretty much highlighted male privilege in hip hop and how, Megan not getting, the benefit of the doubt of what happened and how people side with, male artists more, and how her situation was laughable in a lot of ways, but had to been a situation in reverse where a male rapper would have been shot or killed, the energy would have been completely different. So, that's what I wanted the show to be, to kind of, be this sort of like this place for thinking, this place for analyzing pop culture and seeing how it affects and, and sometimes reflects society.
I find it very interesting that, especially when you brought up the Megan and Tory Lanez thing, because we already have like now, because he's been kind of like charged. And the interesting thing is the length she had to go to prove that not only was she shot and all these things, going on the IG lives and being extremely vulnerable, that we don't require the same of men in that instance. And I think that's why when it comes to your social media platform, there's a lot of times that people correct me, right? And sometimes I'll say things and it's just like, da, 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 and people be like, no, what about this, right? And I think with you, it's like you and Latasha, it's like I love like hearing other perspectives because sometimes I get caught up in my own thing. And if you realize, especially when you guys interact with me, I'll stop and be like, okay, that person has a point. I should stop and like analyze this, right? And I think that's what I enjoy, because a lot of times with me, I don't have a problem having difficult discussions. I just care how you do it, because I'm always open to being corrected. I don't know everything. And I love how you and Latasha, of course, Latasha is way more aggressive, but I love her. She's like, this is stupid. I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to listen, because I feel like that's a lot of people are really stuck in their ways. And I feel like with some people like you and I, or like other, who's like, not in the middle, but I'm open to like hearing, because then it's like it helps me understand. I think that's what makes you such a great host and personality when it comes to how you do things, because you'll tell people like, this is really stupid, but you say it in this most eloquent way that I don't feel as stupid as I should. And it's like da, 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 and it's like, translation, you're an idiot, but here's why you're not, but here's why you are, and it is what it is.
But so it's so funny that you say that, because I try. One of the things that my friends are always saying about me is that I'm Mr. Know-It-All. But once again, I just thrive and operate off of facts. So like I need facts in order to make my argument about something. So I'm always open to new information, because to be quite honest, like a lot of the hindrance in my past was me being in my own head, and not in a good way, just being super ignorant and not aware of things around me. So when you get older, when you have more experiences, you do start to realize certain things. You do start to have a broader outlook on a lot of things. And as far as, doing that with Latasha, and I will always say this, with no sort of hesitation, Latasha is responsible for a lot of who I am as a host and as a personality. We met a few years ago through, our mutual friend Jameer. And ever since then, we've just been able to just have this like chemistry that happened organically. It's like, it's nothing that we talked about. It's nothing that we discussed. It's just literally you put us in front of a camera, or like we're just in the midst of each other, and it just happens. It's just something that's just organic. But even with, working with her, you start to be able to have conversations about things in a way that is insightful, while also being able to get your point across, but also without disrespecting the other person's point of view. So I feel like that helped me so much with being an interviewer, because, you kind of have to play different angles when you're interviewing somebody. You have to be somebody who's receptive and listening. You have to be somebody who's also able to take that information, be able to give it back into a certain capacity. And you also have to be able to think of things that make the situation or the interview a lot better, in those instances at times. Because one of the things that I did away with early on when I started doing interviews, and I'm not encouraging anybody else to do it, I just know that it works for me personally, but I used to do bullet points where like I would have like this question and that question and this question and that question. And I wound up not doing that anymore, because in the middle of an interview, the interview, in the middle of the interview, I would say something, or, the person I'm interviewing, they would say something, and then it'll be like, wait, like, that's interesting. Let's dig deeper into that. And then you dig deeper into that. And then by then you're so off course and in a different conversation that everything that you wrote down before kind of just doesn't matter anymore because you got the interview.
Yeah. And I feel like with that free flowing type of thing, it kind of makes it go like, I feel like a lot of times the natural conversation, and that's something that you've kind of touched on earlier when it came to conversation with Little Brother and other people, where you're just talking, right? Yeah. And because you're just having like that very casual conversation, but it's really intentional, and because it comes from like a good place, you're gonna have such great stories. And I feel like that's why I look forward to things that you do. And I'm really excited just to, now that I know more about Pop Dust, and I really keep on tabs with what you do. And I'm very excited to see where else you're going to go with it when it comes to, catching up on your music, and when it comes to just understanding you as a person. That I'm very honored to be able to like call you a peer and a friend, because like, I feel like there's a lot of education that I've got to just see just quietly from the silence, where it's like, okay, he's doing that type of thing. And I feel like that's just pretty cool.
And honestly, bro, like, that's what I want. I know a lot of people like want to be in a position where they could be influential, but they want to do it, to more so satiate whatever it is that they feel about themselves, where like they feel like they're setting the trend, and they're kind of starting the wave just for vanity purposes. Me, I really feel like, I want to give back in everything that I do. I want to be able to offer, hip hop, this sort of conduit and this sort of avenue, because I feel like hip hop has given me so much. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for music in so many different ways. And just me as a black man, we don't have that many platforms where like, you see a black man who is open to discussion with a myriad of topics, centered in music, and having a diverse, sort of platform that allows artists from like all different sorts of genres of music to come and sit down, and tell their story and, showcase their talent. And there was honestly a point where like, and a lot of people don't know this, like maybe a few like of my very, very close friends, because I've talked about it. There was a time that I was considering leaving Pop Dust.
Wow. Okay. Just
because there was a point in time where, with me being the only real like lead visible face there, there was an influx of like black artists coming through. And once again, these are black artists with legacy in, music. Last year I interviewed Dionne Warwick. Wow. So it's like, I'm having these, like, I'm bringing Dionne Warwick to the office. Like, Elle Vonner just walked through the office. Like, I'm sitting down with the Hamiltones, Dame Grease, who, produced like 80% of DMX's first album, is in the office, And, I got Torre from, from Sirius XM, he's sitting down with us and giving us an interview. And it's like, nobody cares, because I'm in an environment where, it's predominantly white. So it was like the culture appreciated, like people like you and like, my friends would hit me like, yo, I just saw you got such and such to come through. And it's like, what? Like, how'd you get them? Like, that's crazy. That's big. You about to be famous. But then in the office, it didn't matter, because people weren't aware of the people that I was bringing in.
They didn't even understand the magnitude and the power of it.
Or they didn't know. So I was getting frustrated, because it was like, here I am, I'm doing this. And it's like, it's not even about the money. It's just that I want my work to be acknowledged, at the fact that I'm bringing in all of these big artists, and it's not even so much like I'm going after them. They're coming to me. So I was just like reaching a point where, and I'm doing a lot more interviews with artists, because once again, we have a schedule. And at this point, they're just plugging me in on the schedule, like, oh, Deascent, he's interviewing this person. And I'm just like, yeah, whatever. And me being fairly consistent is just me going with the motions, because I want to finish something that I started. So I was getting burnt out, especially with doing multiple interviews a day. And it just got to a point where like, I was like expecting some sort of like boost, or like some sort of like, push from the platform, and I wasn't getting that. So I was like, why am I doing if it's not being appreciated? So the turning point for me was when I interviewed Jesse Wu last year. And it was like a standard interview for the most part, but instead I decided to do something different. And I came up with this game. And once again, this is something that I attribute to Latasha from our We Shall Overchug days. So I came up with a game, specifically designed for her, called, Zozo or No No.
Oh, it's not because the Haitian background.
Yeah. So pretty much the object of the game was like I would give her a list of celebrities and she would say whether she would, sleep with them or not. And her publicist enjoyed, the game so much. And that wasn't something that I was told to do. It was something that I came up with on my own. And it wound up being one of the most viewed interviews on the platform last year. And we had people come through and once again, they do performances and the performances, they'll get good numbers, but our interviews, not so much. This was an interview that, got like 15,000 views.
That's crazy.
And this was something that I came up with on my own. And then even after the interview, I was talking to her and kind of like, vocalizing my frustration a little bit. And then she was like, just keep doing it, and that was like the boost that I needed. And so when the opportunity came up to interview Little Brother, that's when Hosted by Deascent was born, because it was like, you know what? I have this platform with Pop Dust and they're letting me do whatever it is that I want to do within reason, of course. So why not just do whatever it is that I want to do? And why not just have my own individual show, separate from everything else that's going on the platform, especially since I'm highlighting, mostly Black artists. And I had the propensity to put them in a sort of framing that anybody else on the platform who did an interview wouldn't be able to. Mm-hmm. So I was like, you know what? That's it. I'm doing my own show. And that's how Hosted by Deascent kind of came into the fold with that little conversation from Jesse Wu. And then it was like, okay, I got Little Brother. Perfect. Like, that's what better way to start off, and I actually said that in the interview.
That was like one of the things where I was like, I mean, obviously at the time I was like, dude, I didn't understand it. I got it because it was like, this is a great first guess, but now kind of like having this conversation with you is kind of like that revisitory like situation where I can flash back to. It's like now it kind of comes full circle. Everything makes sense with that.
And that was like one of the interviews where like it was, I don't want to say trial by fire because I've already been doing interviews, but like now this is like my interview. So it's like I'm not depending so much on Pop Dust to make this a success. I'm depending on me to make it a success. And, I put out the trailer for it. A lot of people were excited about it. And then I woke up the next morning and saw that Questlove retweeted the trailer for the interview. And I was like, yo, this might actually like be a thing. And the interview got like really good views. And even Fonte and Pooh afterwards, like they just hung out and we just chilled. Like they stuck around in the office and was playing pool and all of that. Like I'm building like, camaraderie in a way with a lot of these artists as well, and that's a great feeling because they go through so many different interviews. And like I always say, to them when they stop by, like, oh, how many interviews do you got today? Like, always making them like, look, I'm gonna get you in, I'm gonna get you out because I know you got places to be. But it winds up being an experience for them that they really, really enjoy. And like, I can't express how much it means when like artists walk away, saying like, yo, this is probably one of the best interviews I've ever done. Or like, I had so much fun, or you asked, such a great question. And then like, even in the course of an interview where someone goes, that's a great question. It's like, that's like vindication for me because it feels like I'm connecting with them on a level that, other people might not have been able to. So it's funny to see that, at my point of frustration, at my point of, breaking almost, that I was able to kind of like turn the corner and bring it back. And now I'm in a position now where I went from, subsequently being a freelancer and somebody that just managed the social media to, somebody who kind of wrote an article every now and then to now, literally, it's my job to write articles and come up with video content at this point. So I really, am protective of the platform that I have, with Pop Dust because they started to understand and they started to get it. So that was like, major for me because I felt like, any other company, they would have been like, well, whatever, we don't care. But like with them, they paid attention to the fact that I needed certain things. And they paid attention to the fact that I wanted certain things highlighted. And they give me the freedom to be able to express that. So it did get a little bit trying because also like with me being the only black face there, it felt so token in certain moments.
Because then it's like that weight on your shoulders and people having not understanding your experience, not understanding your background or why you see things the way you do.
Exactly. So it was just like, you know, I don't want to, you know, be the only guy. Like every time you see a black person on Pop Dust, you know that Deascent brought them in. But then my father has this expression that he says all the time. He always says, if not you, then who?
Wow.
So I had to kind of take a step back and like really analyze that, if it's not going to be me, then these artists are not going to necessarily have somebody to help them tell their story, you know, because black stories beyond music are important because a lot of us are trying to make it in this game and in this business and in this world. And then you do have people with legacies like a Dionne Warwick who do have, you know, additional stories to tell as well that might not have been able to been told before or had somebody else been able to bring those stories out of them. So I feel like, you know, I have an obligation to be able to be in a position where I can help people tell their story. So it's not something that I take for granted in the least bit, but it's something that I'm really, really just focused on. I'm always just thinking about how I can improve and do things better and be a real asset to, you know, the culture. And I don't mean that in a very cliche way, but like I really want, you know, what I do to, if not, you know, inspire thought, at least inspire somebody to, you know, inspire somebody else to have a thought, you know, at least like some sort of conversation, some sort of dialogue, whether you agree or disagree, because like I said, I love the idea of having a conversation rooted in intelligence when it comes to things surrounding art, because with black people, I don't think people see a lot of the stuff that we do as art. They just see it as a trend. And I want to eradicate this idea of a lot of the things that we built, you know, in this world of being a trend and have it be art, have it be culture, have it be something of significance and something of importance. That's why I do interview, you know, artists from, you know, I don't want to say the past, but like, you know, artists who like aren't necessarily in their heyday, but still made a major contribution. Like I interviewed Curtis Blow. Like Curtis Blow is one of the reasons why hip hop is where it is today.
Yeah, without like a lot of those early forefathers, like there is no the Baby, Megan, a lot of the Drakes. Like we need those people to do what they did so that people that we love now are here.
Exactly. And so to be able to sit down with Curtis Blow and talk about the construction of the hip hop museum in the Bronx and me growing up in the Bronx and, you know, feeling this like spiritual attachment to the Bronx, like it was like I got the Bronx tattooed on me. It's like, you know, the birthplace of who I am, both literally and figuratively, you know. So to be able to have that conversation with Curtis Blow about hip hop and, you know, the hip hop museum, like I get to have a conversation and talk to people about things that made me who I am, you know, and get their insight on it and get their take on it. And in a lot of instances, it kind of confirms a lot of the things that I knew, but felt like I was crazy because I didn't have other people to talk to about it. You know, so when I'm sitting down talking to people who've been in the game for 10, 20, 30 years, and we're having conversations about certain things, it's really, really reassuring to feel like you're on the right track when you're able to be in a room with these people and have a conversation with them about something that they've been doing for years and are masters at.
I got to say in this entire interview, and I just why I love coming to these conversations with as much research as possible, but just to understand with like that of like where you came from, right? Mm-hmm. You came from, you know, just writing, figuring out your way, loving music, and how all of these relationships you met along the way. Shout out to Brent. Shout out to that young lady you were dating at the time that was a writer. That, you know, these are opportunities that because people saw something in you, that's not that you didn't see in yourself, but you were just kind of like, you know, you had one target and then there's kind of like this other thing comes into play where now you're really making your own type of lane that originally, if you ask yourself as a little kid, would I have been doing these impactful interviews, these impactful spaces to bring out a lot of people? You probably wouldn't have thought about it, but it was in you all along when it comes to this journey of everything you've done. And you've done the most important thing that relates to that quote from the beginning of this episode. And I just got to say one more time, reputation is a cornerstone of power. That you do walk into rooms and people be like, yo, that's decent. Like people are going to know because of the things you've done. And I just really want you to, again, throughout this entire interview and just going forward, like, yo, man, you're really doing it right now. And just really appreciate the time that you brought to this interview. So Is there anything else you're working on, and like before we kind of like close out that, or you just kind of want to allude to? You don't have to name it, but is there anything coming up in the future, anything like that?
Yes, as a lot of people know, Latasha, she put together and sourced, and crowdfunded for her sketch comedy show Interactions. So I'll be on that.
I can't wait.
Yeah, I can't wait for that either. Unfortunately, COVID is kind of like knocked production back, once or twice, but like it is definitely coming soon, and I cannot wait to get in the acting space a little bit more. So, I'm working with my good friend Jameer on this episode. I'm working with Carr
Logan. Shout out to Carr. He was in season 1 of Dreams Money Can Buy.
Yeah, Carr's a real good dude, real good funny dude, man. Shout out to Carr. So like, being able to be in a room with like these creative minds, like, it solidifies that I am doing, the right thing. And just now, like, I'm just in the space of like, creating, of course, for Pop Dust and, creating for myself, but just really seeing what other opportunities come my way. Because once again, like, I have this sort of creative privilege. So if I feel like this is an avenue that I want to take and, something that I want to do, then I'm going to do it. But for the most part, my focus right now is just make sure that we, and I do mean we as, Black people as a culture, has somebody, in this position, somebody with credibility, somebody, with integrity, somebody who loves what they do, and somebody who is willing to highlight us in the best way possible. Because like we keep saying, reputation is the cornerstone of power. And I do not want to be one of those people who drops the ball when it comes to highlighting Blackness ever. So between just my overall need to want to create and to produce great content, combined with, just me being so prideful as a Black man and wanting to showcase that pride in anything I do, those are just good. I feel like those two things are my motivation, and hopefully ultimately will be my legacy, not just with anything I do, be it music, be it writing, be it content creation. I just want people to know that whatever it is that I did, it was for the betterment of, Black culture and, the betterment of Black people as well.
Man, it's so impeccable with your words, man. Yo, guys, give it up for Deascent. Yo, tell them where they can follow you on all social media platforms. And just, this is your time. This is your closing scene right here.
Okay. You can follow me at Deascent on all social media. I'm very, very friendly for the most part, unless you get a little bit too weird. But like, feel free to reach out to me. Make sure you guys subscribe to the Pop Dust YouTube channel and check out Hosted by Deascent. You can also catch it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. We're about 7 episodes in. Once again, I definitely do have intentions on bringing it back when, we get into a better space on the other side of COVID. But for the most part, you could check out those interviews. And I have some other interviews that I'm currently working on, just because I do miss it. So I'm figuring out, logistics to be able to do it safely, in person with a few artists and a few personalities that I have in mind. But yeah, pretty much that's what I got out right now. And if you guys want to check out my music, you can find me on all streaming platforms, Tidal, Spotify, Apple Music, Google Play, under the name Deascent as well.
Guys, give it for Deascent. This is your host, Skip from BK. Dreams Money Can Buy. So we're gonna, close out here. So if you don't know how to follow Deascent, he said that, and I'll repeat it. It's Deascent. It is a very interesting and unique spelling. It is Deascent. I have to just make sure we could catch that because he's spending time with us. I'm Skip from BK on literally every platform. Powered by Cove Output and Slept On Creative. Shout out to Jomo and Katiana. Guys, we are out. Peace. Another episode, another post-credit scene. All right, so we just got, done having a discussion with Deascent. Shout out to him, such a talented writer, talented personality, talented interviewer, and he's just a pleasure to even get to just have a chat with. He's not usually on that side, so just get to see him more on that. So if you want to keep up with Deascent on Twitter and Instagram, just remember Deascent is spelled in such a unique way. So it's Deascent. Again, listen, spelling, pay attention. Deascent. So you can follow him on Twitter and Instagram. Make sure you follow his podcast. I know it's kind of like on hiatus, but I know it's hosted by Deascent. And yeah, he's probably going to have some more projects coming out as he writes more articles for Pop Dust. So just really pay attention to his profile, and you should see some more things. And while you're keeping up with him, just make sure you stay tuned with me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr at SkipFromBK. Yeah, hopefully get some more comedy out there, some more content, more reels, more sketches. So we're going to work on that. Also, big shout out to Slept On Creatives. They're the production company that helps with the audio and the visuals, just to make sure that we look good. Each season, we're trying to do bigger and better, be consistent with the quality, and sometimes up it when we have the budget. So on Instagram, it's just Slept On Creatives, and on Twitter, it is SO_creatives. That's SO_creatives for Twitter. And last but not least, it is my baby, my brainchild, my space. It is Cove Alpha. So, follow Cove Alpha on Twitter, Instagram, wherever, even the website, just to be in the know for future podcasts, for future articles, for, content. We're trying to get things more consistent. We've been dealing with a lot of things on this side, just to be transparent, but, we're trying to work through it, and we're going to see you on the other side. So peace.